how often do you play back that AFC Championship game in your head, driving to work or just staring up at the ceiling, or any moment in time, Coach?
I mean, it's so difficult for me. Sometimes they have those replays on TV, and I get frustrated with myself because I think, I look at myself and say, what could I have done a better job for our team? How could I put them in better position? What could have done? What maybe I could have done differently? And I think, it's a point. It's an issue that's in all of our stomachs, and it's tough. I mean, just mention it and you feel that same type of pain, that you felt afterwards. But I think it's important, especially for this team, like you said, there is talent here. It is a young football team, and we'll think of, the one challenge that we have is, we're not that team that we were at the end of the year where we were playing. We've got to go back and learn lessons from the past, but let's make sure we learn a lesson of how hard we worked at this time of year in training camp and during the season, and that's what's going to get us to a position that we hope, where we can, win this AFC South and move on. But there's a lot of work to be done in between.
So what do you look back and think you could change or wish was different, other than obviously the final score?
I mean, there's a lot of things, from an aggressive style. There's so many things that you'll question, and not just because it was the AFC Championship game. I think, I do that to myself after every game. When win or lose for me is difficult because I always think that, we could have done a better job. And I have a hard time with the way I'm wired of, really appreciating it. And I have to force myself, to make sure that I do a good job, congratulating the players to do a good job. And, I know that, when they don't, they obviously, they're going to hear it from me. And when I don't do a good job, I think it's important to being the head coach to stand up there and say, hey, listen, I've got to do a better job, and it starts with me.
Well, in terms of that game, Coach, I'd love to give you a chance to respond, because so many people were saying the way that the play calling went down at the end of the first half of that game was indicative of the confidence you have in your quarterback and Blake Bortles in trying to win a football game and not trusting him or something along those lines. How do you respond to that?
Well, I respond to it this way. I mean, we go into the game with a plan prior to. I don't think it's a matter of the trust or what you want to do. I do have a history of playing against that team, the one that, New England that we're speaking about. I've done it a couple of different ways. I just felt that, I think the critical point was, after the timeout, the clock ran quick and we wound up, getting a complete pass where we're in scoring position, and then it wound up being nullified with the delay of game. That hurt us. And, you had the lead. You wanted to go in. You wanted to make sure that we were in good shape after we made that mistake. And then coming out, we felt like we did a good job early on with our run play action game, and felt that we really needed to run the football and get that going, and we just didn't do a good enough job of that.
Well, so how is Bortles a different quarterback, if at all, from when you first found him so far now?
Well, the first time really putting in the system was the two games, or really I think it was 3 or 4 games with Coach Hackett, and it's difficult when you're trying to implement a system, but there's a system already in place. So, last year was the first time that we had the full system in place with him. And, early on in training camp, obviously there were some struggles, and he really came back from that. He's a resilient kid. Probably the greatest characteristic is his toughness and being able to handle, all the noise on the outside. And then really probably around from the Cincinnati game on, you really saw him, getting confidence in the system, his teammates getting a lot of confidence in him. And, we've always felt that he had the ability to do it. And he really started to play well. And in year 2, the way we started out now, he has a very good grasp, and we're expecting, obviously, better things from him this year.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.